Let me start with a question most women avoid answering honestly. When you look at your life right now, why do you have so few real friends? And I don't mean people you follow, people you text twice a year, or the women you smile at in public but never truly let in. I mean friends who would notice if your voice sounded off. Friends who call without an agenda. Friends who feel safe enough to tell you the truth, and who you feel safe enough to tell the truth to. Now here's the part almost nobody understands. A lack of close friendships in adulthood is rarely about bad luck. It usually reveals something psychological about your inner world. Something subtle. Something patterned. Something you may not even realize you're doing. And if you stay with me until the end, I'm going to show you why adult friendships quietly disappear after your 30s, 40s, and 50s, how your brain keeps repeating the same social patterns even when you're trying harder to connect, and the exact science-based steps that allow you to rebuild real connection in a way that feels calm, grounded, and emotionally sustainable. Before we go deeper, subscribe to this channel if you're ready for honest, emotionally intelligent conversations. This is going to be deep. And yes, I'm going to challenge you, but in a way that can genuinely change how you experience connection in your life. So now answer me honestly. When was the last time you felt genuinely known by a friend? Let's be real for a moment. Adult life is genuinely busy. Work demands your attention. Family responsibilities pull at you from different directions. Stress accumulates. And whatever energy is left often goes toward recovery, not connection. But being busy still doesn't fully explain something important. Because if lack of time were the real reason, then all busy women would slowly lose friendships. And that's simply not what happens. Some women, with full schedules and heavy responsibilities, still maintain deep, nourishing friendships. While others, living lives that look very similar on the surface, slowly end up with none. That's why I want you to consider a different explanation. Friendship is not primarily a scheduling problem. It's a nervous system problem. Real connection requires a felt sense of safety inside the body. And safety is not an idea. It's a physiological state. Your brain is constantly running social calculations through the limbic system. It scans for threat, rejection, humiliation, judgment, and emotional risk. And the moment it senses danger, it releases cortisol, your primary stress hormone. Once cortisol rises, your body shifts into protection mode. And in protection mode, connection becomes difficult. You don't relax. You don't soften. You don't stay present. Instead, you start performing. You defend yourself emotionally. You try to control outcomes. You withdraw. You overgive. You mask what you're actually feeling. This is why two women can live nearly identical lives. Same workload. Same family obligations. Same age. Yet one slowly builds stronger bonds, while the other quietly loses them. And here's another uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Sometimes the issue isn't that you haven't met the right people. Sometimes your social patterns quietly push the right people away. Not because you're difficult, not because you're unlovable, but because your brain learned how to relate through survival strategies. Strategies that once kept you safe, strategies that made sense in the past. And now, without you realizing it, those same strategies sabotage intimacy. In adulthood, these patterns tend to show up in 3 common friendship deserts. The first appears when self-protection becomes so strong that emotional reachability disappears. You're polite, you're kind, you're functional, but people can't truly get close. The second emerges when emotional hunger takes over. Connection becomes a place where pressure builds. People start feeling responsible for how you feel. And the third shows up when you remain socially competent on the surface, but emotionally absent underneath. You show up, but nothing bonds. And here's the important part. These deserts are not fixed identities. Many women move between all 3, depending on stress, exhaustion, and emotional load. These friendship deserts don't appear randomly. They form through specific behavioral patterns. Patterns that block oxytocin release and keep the nervous system locked in protection. And in a moment, I'm going to walk you through the 5 most common ones. As you listen, notice which one creates resistance or discomfort in you. That reaction isn't a flaw. It's information. Now let's slow this down and go deeper. Here's the first big revelation. A lack of close friendships usually reveals one of 2 things. Either you don't fully trust other people, or you don't fully trust yourself with other people. At first glance, that may sound simple, but emotionally it's anything but. Some women don't trust people because closeness once came with a cost. Betrayal, gossip, humiliation, being used or dismissed. So over time they adapted. They became polite, independent, low maintenance, and emotionally unreachable. Other women don't distrust people. They distrust themselves. They fear what happens when they get close. They worry they'll overattach, overshare, overgive, overreact. They fear becoming too much. So they keep emotional distance as a form of control. Different strategies. Same outcome. No deep friendships. And now we bring in science. Healthy friendship requires balance between two key systems in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which supports conscious choice, regulation, and perspective, and the limbic system, which governs emotion, threat detection, and attachment. When the limbic system dominates, relationships become reactive. You either cling or shut down. When the prefrontal cortex overcontrols, emotions get analyzed instead of felt. Connection stays intellectual, but never embodied. This is why you can be social and still have no friends. You can be kind and still feel lonely. You can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. So let's be honest, without judgment. If someone got very close to you, what would your body fear first? Being rejected, being controlled, being disappointed, being exposed. That fear matters, because deep friendship is built through repeated experiences of safety. Those experiences trigger the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Oxytocin lowers stress. It softens emotional defenses. And it creates the internal feeling of, I can exhale around you. But when connection is driven by performance, people-pleasing, or guardedness, oxytocin release stays low. Instead, the body maintains low-grade cortisol, and connection begins to feel effortful, heavy, draining, like work. This is the part that's painful to accept. Many women don't lose friends because they're unkind. They lose friends because being around them requires emotional labor. Not because they lack value, but because their nervous system never fully leaves protection mode. And this is where change becomes possible. Awareness activates neuroplasticity. The moment you see the pattern clearly, your brain gains the ability to create a new one. So the real question isn't whether you have patterns. Everyone does. The question is this: are you willing to see yours without defending them? Now I'm going to walk you through 6 patterns that quietly erode adult friendships. Not to blame you, not to label you, but to give you power. Because the moment you can clearly see a pattern, your brain gains the ability to change it. That's neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to create new pathways through awareness, repetition, and intentional choice. Many of these patterns don't feel like problems from the inside. They feel like personality. They feel like strength. They feel like self-protection. But from the outside, they slowly change how safe it feels to be close to you. Let's start with the first one. Some women live by the phrase, I'm fine. Not just occasionally, but as a lifestyle. They believe strength means emotional self-sufficiency. They don't ask for help. They don't name what hurts. They don't allow others to support them. On the surface, they seem grounded and independent. But emotionally, they're difficult to reach. Friendship doesn't bond through perfection or independence. It bonds through appropriate vulnerability. When you never let people in, they never feel needed. And when people don't feel needed, they don't feel close. So ask yourself honestly, do you share your real life? Or only the edited version that feels safe to show? Now let's look at the opposite pattern. Emotional dumping instead of emotional sharing. Here, connection only happens when you're overwhelmed. Conversations arrive loaded, heavy, urgent. You're not relating. You're releasing pressure. In the moment, it feels relieving. Your nervous system gets a hit of dopamine from being heard. But on the other side, the friend's nervous system feels drained. Over time, they begin associating you with emotional labor. And without anyone saying it out loud, distance starts to grow. So notice this gently. Do people mostly hear from you when something is wrong? The third pattern is more subtle. Subtle competition. Not obvious jealousy. Not hostility, but quiet comparison. You downplay their wins. You redirect the conversation back to your struggle. You find it difficult to fully celebrate them without measuring yourself. When this happens, friendship stops feeling emotionally safe. Instead of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the nervous system registers threat. And people don't relax where they feel evaluated. So ask yourself, can you celebrate another woman's success without turning inward? The fourth pattern often hides behind good intentions. Control disguised as care. You give advice that wasn't asked for. You analyze. You correct. You try to help. But adults don't bond through being managed. They bond through being understood. This pattern is usually driven by anxiety. If you can control the conversation, you feel safer from rejection. But control quietly blocks intimacy. So notice this gently. When someone shares, do you listen? Or do you fix? The fifth pattern is chronic negativity. When every interaction circles back to resentment, complaint, or cynicism, people slowly disappear. Not because they don't care, but because nervous systems co-regulate. Your emotional state influences theirs, and a chronically negative tone raises cortisol in the room. Over time, people associate you with emotional heaviness. So when friendships fade, ask yourself honestly, do you assume people are fake? Or do you consider the emotional climate you create? And finally, the sixth pattern. This is the one I see most often, and it's the hardest to recognize in yourself. Emotional unpredictability. When people don't know which version of you they'll encounter. Warm or distant. Calm or reactive. Supportive or suddenly offended. Even if they like you. Even if you're a good person. Even if you're fun sometimes. Safety is the foundation of friendship, and safety requires consistency. Your friends' nervous systems need to be able to predict you well enough to relax. When your emotional state shifts unpredictably, their limbic system stays on alert. Cortisol remains elevated, oxytocin doesn't release fully, and over time, distance forms quietly, not as punishment, but as self-protection. So pause here for a moment. Which one of these six patterns created resistance in you? That resistance is important. It's the pattern your brain wants to protect, and it's often the one shaping your relationships the most. Now let's answer the deeper question. Why do these patterns feel so automatic? And how do you interrupt them in real time? Let's go deeper into the why. Because insight without mechanism rarely changes behavior. Your brain builds habits through repetition. Social habits included. Over time, your nervous system creates neural pathways that fire automatically in familiar situations. That's efficiency, not failure. But efficiency becomes a problem when the pattern no longer serves you. For example, someone takes longer than usual to reply. Your limbic system interprets the delay as a threat. Cortisol rises. Your body shifts into protection. You may chase by sending more messages. Or you may pull away completely. Or you react with subtle hostility. And then your mind fills the silence with meaning. People don't care. That story feels true. But it isn't truth. It's a trained prediction. This is where the prefrontal cortex becomes essential. The prefrontal cortex allows you to pause. To reflect, to choose instead of react. But under stress, that part of the brain goes offline faster. You don't become irrational. You become familiar. You become your old wiring. And this is why adult friendship is hardest precisely when you need it most. Stress makes you less emotionally reachable, less flexible, less patient, less safe to connect with. Now here's a truth that changes everything. Friendship is not built through grand gestures. It's built through micro moments of repair. Small moments where regulation replaces reaction. These moments often sound very simple. I realize I got defensive just now. Let me try again. I'm feeling insecure, and my instinct is to pull away, but I care about you and I want to stay present. Or even, I don't need advice right now. I just need you to listen. These moments matter more than you think. They create new neural circuits. They lower cortisol. They increase oxytocin. And slowly, they rebuild safety. The real question is this. Do you know how to create these moments intentionally? Or do they disappear when emotion rises? Here's a simple way to regulate yourself in real time. It works through a 3-step sequence that slows the nervous system before the reaction takes over. First, you name what's happening internally. You tell yourself, my body is reading this as rejection. Second, you slow the body. You lengthen your exhale. You relax your jaw. You soften your shoulders. This sends a signal of safety back to the brain. And third, you choose your next response intentionally. One calm message, one curious question, one clear boundary, or simply a pause. This is neuroplasticity in action. Not theory. Practice. Try it right now. Unclench your jaw. Drop your shoulders. Take one slow exhale. Your brain learns safety through the body first. Now let's talk about something most women were never taught. Especially if you grew up in a home where emotions were either ignored, minimized, or allowed to explode without repair. In those environments, you don't learn how to relate. You learn how to adapt. And adaptation might help you survive childhood, but it rarely supports adult intimacy. The first skill many women never develop is curiosity instead of performance. A lot of women spend time together, but they aren't truly present. They're monitoring themselves, managing how they look, managing how they sound, managing how they're being perceived. That internal performance pulls attention away from connection. And the body cannot release oxytocin while it's busy performing. Oxytocin requires presence. It requires attention moving outward, not inward. So instead of focusing on how you're coming across, gently shift your attention to the person in front of you. Who is she really? What's happening beneath her words? And notice something important. When you're with other women, are you comparing? Or are you connecting? The second skill is emotional pacing. Some women learn to survive by saying nothing at all. They keep everything inside. They appear calm, but emotionally unreachable. Others learn to survive by saying everything, all at once. There's no pacing, no gradual building of trust. But friendship is not built through emotional extremes. It's built slowly. Safety grows when honesty is offered in small, appropriate doses. And when responsiveness, not pressure, meets that honesty. Allow yourself to share one real detail. Not everything. Just one. Then notice how it lands. That back and forth is how mutual safety is created. The third skill is directness without aggression. Many women avoid direct communication because they fear conflict. So instead, resentment builds quietly, or they explode after holding too much inside. Emotional maturity lives in the middle. Clean communication doesn't attack. It doesn't withdraw. It names reality calmly. Sometimes it sounds very simple. Something fell off the last time we talked. I care about our connection, and I'd like to clear it if you're open to that. That sentence doesn't control. It doesn't accuse. It signals regulation. And that kind of regulation is a form of leadership in relationships. The fourth skill is consistency. Friendship doesn't require constant contact, but it does require reliability. Nervous systems bond through predictability. A simple check-in every week or two creates emotional continuity. Like watering a plant before it starts to dry out. And here's where brain chemistry matters. Dopamine is about reward and anticipation. It thrives on novelty, stimulation, and quick hits. Serotonin, on the other hand, supports stability, calm, and emotional well-being. Modern life trains dopamine chasing. Endless scrolling, constant stimulation, always something new. But friendship is built on serotonin-based behaviors. Consistency, calm, repetition, depth. So sometimes, healthy friendship feels quiet, almost boring. But that boredom isn't emptiness. It's often your nervous system finally feeling safe. So pause and ask yourself honestly, do you confuse peace with boredom? And now, I know what some of you may be thinking. This sounds like a lot of effort. And is it even worth it? People disappoint. Women are fake. Isn't it safer to stay alone? Let's look at that belief carefully, because it may not be protecting you in the way you think. If you want deep friendships, they can't be built on convenience. They're built through intention. And if you know another woman who quietly feels alone, even if she looks fine on the outside, share this with her. Not to analyze her, just to help her feel seen. Now let's talk about the objection most women carry quietly. People are disappointing. Women are fake. Friendships always end. It's safer to stay alone. Sometimes that belief comes from real experience. Loss, betrayal, disappointment. But sometimes it's a protective story the brain uses to avoid vulnerability. Because if you decide people are unreliable, you never have to risk being hurt again. But you also never get to be loved deeply again. And the brain loves certainty. especially fearful certainty, even when that certainty leads to loneliness. Here's a healthier truth. Some people are unsafe, and your job is not to trust everyone. Your job is to become skilled at discerning. Discernment lives in the prefrontal cortex. It allows you to observe patterns over time instead of reacting to single moments. It helps you move slowly, to test connection instead of rushing into it. It teaches you to notice consistency, not just emotional intensity. It supports setting boundaries early, before resentment takes root. And it reminds you not to overinvest emotionally in people who haven't earned that level of access. That's not cynicism. That's emotional intelligence. And here's something discernment often reveals, even though it's uncomfortable. Sometimes we don't lack friends because we keep choosing the wrong people. Sometimes we keep choosing familiar dynamics. If chaos feels like love, you'll be drawn to chaotic relationships. If criticism feels like closeness, you'll bond with critical people. If you learn that being needed equals being valued, you'll attract people who take more than they give. That's not fate. That's conditioning. This is where cognitive behavioral patterns matter. Your beliefs shape your choices. Your choices shape your outcomes. So ask yourself honestly, do you choose friends based on who feels good in your body, or who feels familiar to your nervous system? Now let me bring this together before we move into action. Your nervous system learned protection patterns early in life. Those patterns helped you survive, but today, they may be sabotaging intimacy. And here's the hopeful part. Neuroplasticity means those circuits are not permanent. They can be rewired, not through insight alone, but through repeated, intentional practice. So now, let's move from understanding to action. Let me close with something I want you to remember. Remember the question I asked you at the very beginning? Why do you have so few real friends? Now you know the real answer. It's not bad luck. It's not because you're unlovable. It's not because all women are fake or people are disappointing. It's because your nervous system learned a way of relating that once kept you safe, but now keeps you isolated. And here's what changes everything. If you don't have close friends right now, it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means your nervous system learned a certain way of relating. And now you're ready to learn a better one. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first, because your brain will try to pull you back to familiar patterns. That's normal. That's conditioning. That's cortisol trying to protect you. But you are not stuck. You can change your patterns. You can build new circuits. You can become someone who feels safe to love and safe to be close to. And if you've been telling yourself, it's too late for me, I want you to hear this clearly. Your brain can change at any age. That's neuroplasticity. Your relationships can change at any age, but not through wishing, through practice. So here's your final assignment. Choose one thing, one pattern, one microbehavior, one reach out, one repair. Do it this week, and then come back and tell me what happened. If you want more honest, science-based guidance on confidence, boundaries, emotional regulation, and healthy relationships, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this with a woman who needs it. Because you don't need more followers. You need real connection. And you can build it, starting now. What would your life feel like 1 year from today if you had just 2 safe, real friendships?